Hello, my name is Rowan Ganju. It's November 2019 and this is my presentation on human immunity. So I'm going to start with the first slide, which is skin. So the skin acts as a physical chemical barrier for our bodies. It's like our shield against, it covers us from the environment, from pathogens, bacteria and viruses that can be harmful. Our skin is a fantastic barrier against infection, but if its integrity is lost over time through injury or aging, and it can penetrate deeper tissues, then it can cause infections. The main function of the skin is to keep the organs from drying out and to prevent water loss in dry environments. The body would not be able to sustain its normal activities. The skin also keeps too much water from rushing out the body. The barrier provided by the skin allows just enough water to enter the body without flooding it. The skin is the largest organ in the body. It protects us from our environment and pathogens. It's a shield and a major part of our immune system. The skin prevents most pathogens and infections, such as environmental toxins harmful to the body. The skin provides the barrier to the outside world, and it plays a vital role in protecting us from our external environment. The functions of the skin. So, it prevents us from microbacterial organisms. It prevents us from chemical irritants. It prevents us from toxins. It absorbs and blocks the solar rays and radiation, and it inhibits water loss. The effectiveness of the barriers of the immune system. So our immune system defends our body against pathogens. It's a physical and chemical barrier to prevent infection. White blood cells attack pathogens. The skin prevents invasion unless it's damaged, for example by injury or burn. Our airways, they filter unwanted harmful particles in the air via the passages. So your nose and your airways, they're coated with a mucus. When you breathe in the air, the mucus goes down like a filter and only enters the lungs what we actually need, good air. The digestive tract. So this is a series of barriers, including stomach acid, pancreatic enzymes, bile and intestines, which secrete and they contract. The intestines should normally be shedding cells, and they help remove harmful microorganisms. The bladder is another effective barrier. This protects the bladder via the urethra. In males, the urethra is actually shorter, and so it's not often that bacteria is easily to pass into the bladder, unless perhaps it's unintentionally placed there by a catheter or surgical equipment. In females, the urethra is shorter, so occasionally it allows bacteria to pass through to the bladder. The flushing effect of the bladder is also another defence mechanism, and that's in both sexes. I'm now going to move on to the role of, trouble saying it, macrophages. So these have a role in destroying the bacteria and tumour cells. They release a substance that acts upon our immune cells. They also are responsible for clearing out dead and damaged tissues. There's a nice little diagram up here in the right hand corner to explain a little bit further. The types of cells that it's responsible for detecting and destroying are pathogens. They can alert our immune system in the presence of invaders. And moving on to slide 6. So this is the role of the lymph nodes and the lymphatic ducts. So again, in the right hand corner there's a nice diagram with highlighted in green, which breaks down all the different little parts of the lymphatic system. So the immune system and the lymphatic system, they work closely together. And they have several parts to it, several organs and several functions. But the immune system is our body's defence against infections and pathogens and viruses, also against bacteria and fungi. They work together, and this helps keep harmful agents that come to attack the body. So there's something here called Schotty lymph nodes. Now this refers to like clusters of small swollen nodes. This occurs when the immune system is reacting to infection. There's also something called bulky disease. Now this is where generally it describes large lymph nodes or a tumour. And then there's also classified nodes, which are typically a result of a previous infection. The lymphatic system is similar to the structure of the cardiovascular system, in that it consists mostly of a network of vessels which are for transporting fluid, cells and tissues throughout the body. Its main roles is fluid balance, absorption of fat-soluble nutrients. It enables foreign material to be delivered to the lymph nodes for assessment by the immune system cells. It maintains balance of fluid between the blood and the tissues, and this is known as fluid hematosis. I'm having trouble with some big words today, sorry. It forms part of the body's immune system, and it helps defend against bacteria and pathogens. So I'm now going to move on to slide 7. This is the role of inflammation and infection. So when our body becomes injured or the skin is broken, the skin can easily be infected, and it can cause an inflammatory response. The immune system's response to damage or infection can be seen physically, and there's a nice little diagram here on the right hand side of some toes that have become infected. So it's showing as a reddy pink colour. It could be warm to the touch. It can become swollen and inflamed. And this is how the body physically shows a response to infections by the inflammation. At this time when this is happening, the blood circulation increases around the affected area, and the blood vessels will dilate, which is allowing more blood to flow down to the area, which results in the inflammation, which is the colour and the swollen look or appearance to the skin that we see. Inflammation is a complex biological response to harmful things, such as pathogens or damaged cells or irritants. It's a protective response involving immune cells, blood vessels, and molecular mediators. The function of inflammation is to eliminate the initial cause of cell injury and to clear out any dead cells and to initiate tissue repair. Number 8, acquired immunity. Acquired immunity is acquired immunity. Immunity is the process that starts when a person's immune system encounters foreign invaders and recognises non-self substances. This again is your viruses, bacteria, fungi. And what really happens here is I'm stumbling. Let's say, for example, that you are infected with a virus. The virus then starts trying to attack your immune system, and your body produces cells that will fight it off. Your body is learning the best way to attack, and it begins to develop a memory. So this is actually a part I find quite interesting. It's effectively your body is teaching itself to fight viruses. There's so we're looking here, as you can see on the slide, it says acquired immunity, autoimmunity. Now, I've used a nice little diagram here that shows the 4 major types of immunity, whether it's natural or artificial, and then how it's adapted or how it's initiated immunity to get to your immunity. So there's a nice little cycle that explains there. I'm going to move on to herd immunity because I stumbled on that last slide. I know what I was trying to get out. The herd immunity is about a group being immunised to be 100% effective against something. So an immunised person has 0 probability of becoming infected with the target disease, but by immunising every person in the community, it would eradicate the target disease in the community. So if you had a herd of cows and one was vaccinated, all the others are still likely that they can pick up viruses. But if all the cows were vaccinated, it would be nearly 100% effective that none of the cows would become infected, and that's known as the herd immunity. So the problem with the immunisations is that they do have risks, and every person has to make their own decisions about whether they have vaccinations or not. Vaccinations work by suppressing the immune system, spurring the immune system into action. So a vaccine is teaching your body how to identify viruses and then reacting to that. The immune system quickly recognises and starts fighting things off. Recent studies have shown that the flu vaccine can cut the risk of hospitalisation by up to 70%. So I've actually just had mine yesterday. The flu vaccine is 50 to 60% effective in preventing hospitalisation and up to 80% effective in preventing death from flu and complications. The roles of different types of immune cells is shown below. This is slide 10. So again, I've used a nice little explanation here on the right hand side called antibody. So it gives you here the function and the disease. So the function of the antibodies are proteins, and they are uniquely specific to infectious agents. They help fight infections by attaching themselves to the proteins and then either blocking the availability to infect the host cells, or flagging them up to the destruction by immune cells and other molecules. Sorry, I got a little hiccup. The immune cells in the body, so the master cells in the immune system, they are differentiated into 3 sub-cells: T cells, B cells, and natural killer cells. And then there are 4 different groups of T lymphocytes. These are produced like memory T cells, cytotoxic T cells, helper T cells, and suppressor T cells. And again, they are split into a little diagram down on the left hand side below that shows the structure and the properties of each one of those as well. So I'm now going to move on to slide 11, which is vaccines. So I gave you a little bit of facts before about the flu vaccine, and I've got some more here on this page, on this slide. So the flu vaccine in the year 2015 and 16 in the UK, the flu vaccine was effective at reducing the risk of flu illness by about 50 to 60%. Now, according to this CDC, the flu vaccine reduces the odds of getting flu by up to 60%. Immunisation protects the community health in 2 ways. So the more obvious is protecting individuals from communicable diseases, and the second is the herd immunity, which I just briefly touched on before. So if you were to immunise and you wanted it to be 100% effective, an immunised person has to be 0 probability of becoming infected with the target disease. Then immunising every person in the community would eradicate the target disease in the community. So I'm trying to think of something in medical history. Polio was eradicated for a short time, although there are some cases around at the moment, and measles has been reduced greatly. So it's proof that the vaccines are working, but obviously there are contraindications. So there are people who believe that vaccines aren't helping, and they choose not to be immunised. So I don't think now that we're getting the full protection that we need, but it is still 60 to 70% effective, so that's great. There's also a nice little, what slide am I on? Slide 12. So there's an organs of the immune system little slide here again, a little picture, which I think really helps sort of break down all the areas of the body that's working together in that picture. Number 13 is, what is vaccination? So a vaccine involves exposing the body or the immune system to a weakened, dead or harmless version of the pathogen. So when, for example, I've had the flu virus yesterday, and it's actually a dead virus as opposed to what the children are having now is a live virus via the nose. But this particular one I had yesterday was a dead virus. And what it is doing at the moment is making me feel a little bit poorly. It's teaching my body, oh, hang on, we've been infected here, how do we respond? So that if I was to become infected with real flu virus, my body would also already recognise that and get to work very quickly on fighting the virus. Oh, sorry, I missed a slide. So I'm moving on to slide 14, which is the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine works essentially by its ability to prevent an onset of influenza. It ranges widely, and there are two key factors which play an important role in determining its effectiveness of the given flu vaccine. Even when a vaccine will match, it can be very strong. The benefits of the vaccine will vary significantly across the population depending on the characteristics of the person. So there are different factors about the population having the vaccine that can actually affect its effectiveness. So things like age. I was reading something recently that older people are at risk. Your gender will alter how at risk you are, whether you smoke, whether you already have underlying health conditions, so asthma or previous damages from pneumonia and things like that. So depending on how strong you are is how strong an immune system you will build. And the vaccine can prevent against you from getting influenza, so I would highly recommend vaccines. Vaccines can reduce the risk of flu and associated hospitalisation. Vaccination is effective for women both during pregnancy and after pregnancy. And if you have it during pregnancy, you can pass the immunity to your unborn child for a small amount of time, sort of 3-4 months into them, and that can actually also be passed by breastfeeding, but we'll go to that a little bit further later. There is actually the World Health Organization. There is a lovely piece there on flu vaccine. So if you go to the WHO World Health Organization website and type in flu vaccine, it gives some nice information there about polio, measles and viruses, amongst other targets that have been eradicated globally. So that's where I found that information was quite interesting. Moving on to slide 15, there's MMR vaccine. So the MMR vaccine was a weakened virus vaccine, and it's a very small percentage of people who have 2 doses of MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, will still develop measles, mumps or rubella if they were exposed to those specific viruses. The reasons for this are not entirely certain, but it's thought possible that the immune system didn't respond well. It should have a vaccine. it should have to the vaccine for some reason. About 3 in 100 people who get the MMR vaccine will still get measles if they're exposed to the virus. The symptoms, however, will be much milder and less contagious. Then moving on to slide 16. I've gone up to another one. Slide 16. Again, there are measles cases in the United States from 1944 to 2007, and I found this quite interesting. So, there were lots of cases up until 68, and then vaccines became effective, and you can see there the line tends to tail off into a more flat line, which is great. There's hepatitis B vaccines. So this is hepatitis B is potentially life-threatening. It's an infection of the liver, and it's caused by a Hep B virus. It's currently a major global health issue, and it can cause chronic infection and put people in high risk of death and liver cancer. So, fortunately, however, the vaccines against the Hep B have been available since 1982 and around 95% effective in preventing infections. So I actually got this information from the NHS website on the hepatitis vaccine, and that actually gives a bit more detail there. It's quite interesting. So prevention. The hepatitis B is key to preventing the individual to coming into contact with the virus, and it's all infants will receive a Hep B vaccine as soon as possible after birth. So it's part of an immunisation programme now, and actually my 2 children had that when they were born. The complete vaccine series include. Oh, sorry, I've rolled off again. The complete vaccine series gives you induces protective antibodies levels to more than 95% of vaccinated infants. So children and young adults are protected, and sometimes this is not permanent, but it does generally last for about 20 years. The vaccine has quite an excellent record, and it's safe and extremely effective, and that's been like that since 1982. More than 1 million doses of Hep B vaccine have been given worldwide, and it's considered safe and the most effective vaccine ever made, actually. Hep B vaccine. There is no evidence to state that the Hep B vaccine can cause sudden infant death syndrome, autism, or neurological disorders. That's a nice little fact there on the end. Sorry, I'm folded again. I keep doing that. The slide number 18 is about transplantation. So rejection of transplanted organs. So our immune system is all about protecting ourselves and forbidding the barrier of transplantation process is routine medical treatment. We have seen in the immune system that's developed effectiveness to combat foreign agents. So when a person receives an organ from someone else during transplant surgery, the person's immune system may recognise it as a foreign thing, because so it's our body's used to our system, and then all of a sudden there's a new organ or transplant trying to come into the body, and the body recognises that the cells and everything is different, and it has sometimes is producing a rejection to those things. There is a nice little diagram down here on the bottom right hand corner. So it gives you donor 1 and donor 2, and then it shows you whether the recipient has which blood type and whether they are a cross match. It explains quite nicely there. So organs that are not matched closely enough may trigger the blood to reject the organ, and the likelihood of rejection is, I'm so stomach. The more similar, I'm going to actually come back to this because I'm struggling with that. So, number 19. So, immune disorders. So, the immune system comes with some disorders. So your immune system is the body's defense against infection and other harmful invaders. Without it, you would constantly get sick from germs and bacteria if you didn't have your immune system. Your immune system is made up of cells, tissues and organs that all work together to protect you. Autoimmune, so your body's immune system protects you from disease and infection. Autoimmune system is wide-ranging and can affect almost any parts of the body. So the specific cause of autoimmune system isn't really known, but the triggers of the disease are bacteria, viruses, drugs, chemicals, irritants, and environmental elements. You may be born with you may be born with a weak immune system, and this is called primary immune deficiency. You may get a disease that weakens your immune system, and this is called acquired immune deficiency. You may have immune system that is too active, so too overactive, and this happens when you have an allergic reaction. So if your pollen comes up your nose and you are too overactive to it, you will have what's known as hay fever and allergic reaction. So, or you may even have an immune system that turns against you. So this is called autoimmune disease. Immune system disorders. So severe combined immune deficiency. So this is known as SCID, SID. This an example of this deficiency is that it's present at birth. Children are in constant danger of infections from bacteria, viruses and fungi. Children with SCID are missing important white blood cells in their body, and the disease can be deadly without treatment. There's temporary acquired immune deficiency, so your immune system can be weakened by certain medicines. For example, someone who might be receiving chemotherapy. In the hospital, if we're looking after patients who are receiving chemotherapy treatment, they have to actually have a side room, and we note them as neutropenic, which is, so because their body is receiving treatment for chemotherapy, their immune system is suppressed and weakened, and you can be really, really susceptible to infections like flu, virus, measles, and obviously want to protect them, so that's why they are isolated. The immune system can also be weakened by things like smoking, alcohol intake, and poor nutrition. Another immune system disorder is HIV, which can cause AIDS. It starts with a viral infection that can destroy white blood cells. So again, the white blood cells is hugely important in the system, and this weakens the whole immune system. It can make a person seriously ill and susceptible to more infections. And some of those infections could be something small that most people, healthy people, would be able to fight off, but people with AIDS and HIV can't because their immune system is suppressed. These infections are called opportunist infections because they take advantage of a weak immune system. Another disorder is an overactive immune system. So if you're born with certain genes in your immune system, substances in the environment might normally be harmless to others, can actually be quite harmful to you. These substances are called allergens, and having an allergic reaction is the most common example of this. Might be to things like dust, mold, pollen, food allergies, that type of thing. So, and then finally going on to the last autoimmune disease. For example, there are things called lupus, which can affect the skin, the joints, the kidneys, the heart and the nerves. And also type 1 diabetes can affect the glands, the eyes, the kidneys and the muscles. Slide 22, I'm just a bit conscious of the time, we're rushing through. So a little brief idea about some of the allergies that people have. So asthma is a response to the lungs. It can cause coughing, wheezing, trouble breathing, and for the person it's actually quite difficult. The irritant could be pollen or tobacco smoke. Another one is eczema, so this is itchy rash of the skin. So it's a reaction, it can be to several things like soap, washing powders. It's like a drying and flaking of the skin. Another one is hay fever, so again it's causing sneezing, runny nose, sniffling, swelling of the eyes. I know my son actually has severe hay fever, so it's really awful for him. There are indoor allergens as well as outdoor, so it doesn't have to be pollen, so it could be dust, it could be pets and moulds and things like that within the house. There are food allergies, so these can cause severe allergic reactions and anaphylaxis, so this is another one here. And then autoimmune diseases are the body that would normally attack them, the viruses or the pollens and bacterias. Something as a combination of the person's genes, something in the environment and triggers those genes. There are 3 common autoimmune diseases: type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. Then we're going back to, actually I appear that this slide is in the wrong place really, but I don't have time to go back to it now. So the types of immunity, so it's artificial, natural, passive, and then artificial but passive immunity. So it gives a nice little description on each of those slides. But the one I actually really wanted to just cover a little bit about is the passive immunity. So I find this really fascinating. So antibodies are transferred from person to person by natural means. So if you are pregnant, and this is postnatally as well, so while you're pregnant and after you've had your child, the interactions happen between the mother and the child. So natural acquired passive immunity can occur during pregnancy, with certain antibodies being passed from the mother through the bloodstream to the fetus. And that can also happen through breastfeeding, which I find quite amazing. So some protection for the child is actually from birth or after birth, sort of 4 to 6 months, and then the body will learn, the baby's body will learn eventually to produce its own antibodies, and this then continues to reach its full maturity by the age of 5. So that's really, I like that one. And then accidentally I've gone back to the allergies. So again, I've just covered a little bit here about the environment of allergies. So it's things like preventing allergic reactions and controlling allergies. And then a little bit about hypersensitivity. So hypersensitivity describes an abnormal, sometimes called pathologic. So immune reactions that is caused by the immune response to repeated exposure of the same allergen. For example, hypersensitivity diseases include autoimmune diseases in which immune responses are directed against self-antigens. An example of these could be cancer cells. All diseases that result from uncontrolled or excessive response to foreign antigens. And again, in the top right-hand corner, it gives a lovely little picture of the asthma triggers, just as an example there. Slide 25 are the types of allergies. So it's, there are 2 classified, they are classified into 2 broad categories, the IgE mediated and the non-IgE mediated, and it gives a nice description there. And also on the top right hand corner another little one. And then finally the last slide is about the environment control. So this is about allergies again. So environment control, mould in the house. Tiny particles are released in mould allergic reaction into some people. You can help prevent this if you keep your home dry and well ventilated, removing indoor plants, and do not dry clothes in the house, and fix any damp or condensation, and avoid damp buildings, damp woods, cut grass, compost heaps, things like that, rotten leaves. I didn't know actually rotten leaves can do that until I wrote that in. And pets and animals, there's a little bit there about pets and animals. And then it's gone on to slide 27, 28 and 29, which are all the references for the slides. I'm sorry I stumbled a little bit. I was conscious of the time and being nervous about the video anyway. So let's see, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.